Today is August 10th, 1974, and we have breaking news about Nixon's resignation. Today we're going to have newscasters talking about the political, economic, and social aspects of Nixon's presidency.
Hello everyone, my name is Mariane, and I'll be talking about two political concepts and how they apply today in America. The first political concept will be Vietnamization, which was under the Nixon Doctrine, the Nixon Doctrine was written and ratified in July of 1969, but it was campaigned in 1968 with Nixon with the promise of peace with honor. So again, the Vietnamization is a main part of his campaign and the Nixon Doctrine. The Vietnamization would be American troops would be slowly withdrawn from the conflict in Southeast Asia and be replaced with South Vietnamese troops. A side note, this was all during the Vietnamese War. Okay, so in 1973, U.S. and North Vietnam signed a peace treaty to formally bring the Vietnam War to an end after Vietnamization. However, in 1975, North Vietnam defeated South Vietnam in a united country under communism. This was against the U.S.'s wishes because they wanted to contain communism. So Nixon's plan failed, and America's goal to prevent communism therefore died and was not successful. To continue, I'll be talking about detente, which is defined as the easing of hostility or strained relations between countries. So in terms of Nixon, this refers to the given period of improved relations between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, which began in 1971. So this trip to Russia for Nixon helped him to keep public attention focused on his foreign policies instead of his domestic problems, such as social change, racial equality, and an end to the Vietnam War. Additionally, this trip also heightened the Soviets' interest in detente. By the way, fun fact, the first president to visit Moscow was President Nixon. So in Moscow, Nixon and Brezhnev signed two agreements covering the prevention of accidental military clashes, army control, as recommended by the recent Strategic Arms Limitation talks, also known as SALT. Next, we will be discussing another topic of America. Thank you and have a nice day.
Hi, my name is Nupur, and I'll be talking about two social concepts in America today. So the first one I'm going to be talking about is equal rights for education. So in the 1970s, there were a lot of movements made in order to get the same racial demographics in schools. After the Brown versus Board ruling, which ruled that separate but equal is not constitutional. The government was trying to make equal races of white people and black people in the same schools. So in the Swan versus Charlotte Mecklenburg of education was constitutionalized, which ruled that busing was allowed. So busing was basically when kids were taken to schools outside of their zoned areas in order to get the racial demographics equal. So black students drove like 30 minutes to an hour away in order to attend schools that were majority white people. However, many of the white parents or white families were really upset, so they pulled their kids out of public schools or moved in order to go to private schools, and so their kids would not have to interact with African American students. As a result for this, in 1976, a majority of Boston public schools were actually ruled by minorities. So there was a higher percentage of black students than white students in most of the schools. The second social event I'm going to be talking about is the Watergate scandal. So this was in June 17th, 1972, when there were several burglars found in the Democratic National Committee. And these burglars were connected to Nixon. So these burglars went into the Democratic National Committee's office, and they were found wiretaping phones and stealing documents. And although Nixon didn't partake in this or organize this, after he found out, he was responsible for the cover-up. So after people found out that Nixon was responsible for the cover-up, he was put to trial, and he finally resigned, but he was pardoned by President Ford.
Hi, my name is April, and I'm going to be talking about two economic concepts in America today. So the first one is our stagnant economy. Our manufacturing decline is a huge problem, and we are now importing more than we are exporting. And companies are now closing down because too many of our companies are old and not efficient enough. and millions of people are losing their jobs. The inflation put together with unemployment and our stagnant economy has led to stagflation. Nixon tried to control stagflation by cutting spending and raising taxes and interests, but that failed. Nixon ended gold standard from making inflation worse, but it didn't affect it. Nixon's actions and was known as the New Economic Policy, also known as Nixon's shock. He wanted to force countries to change their exchange rates so that it would help with our economy. The U.S. turned to fiat money, and international economy became less stable. Deficit spending and stock market began to swing. The second economic concept I'm going to be talking about is Presidents Ford and Carter. Inflation was still high when President Nixon quit, and a large part of our economy was still unemployed. The new President Ford tried to fix our economy with a program called WIN, which was Whip Inflation Now, but it had little to no impact. He also tried many things like keeping taxes low. President Carter tried to end recession and reduce unemployment by increasing government spending and cutting taxes, but that didn't work either.
Hello, right now is the sports segment of the news. So, Nihinsky II won the Triple Crown of British Thoroughbred Racing, which is a big accomplishment for him. And unfortunately, the Marshall University football team was killed in a plane crash. But on better news, the National and American Football Leagues merged to become one 26-team mega league. Also, Muhammad Ali returns to boxing after a 3.5-year exile for refusing to go to fight to the Vietnam War to fight and defeat Jerry Quarry in the 3rd round TKO. Thank you.
And now for weather. We have a 40% chance of precipitation with a high of 86 degrees and a low of 65 degrees.
And now we have an exclusive interview with our former president, Richard Nixon. What was your part in the Watergate scandal?
Well, you see, when I found out several of my employees had broken into the Democratic Committee's office and received information, I knew I had to do what was best for my country, in my opinion, which is what a president should be required to do, which is why I refused to give up the tapes and I refused to expose my employees, because I knew at this time of war, I did not want to ununify what we've already created here in America, which is why I did not give up the tapes and I erased them. But I did them with pure intentions, therefore I do not think I have committed any wrongdoing, and I know I did what was best for our nation.
If you could go back in time, would you do the same thing again?
Definitely, without second thoughts.
Okay, thank you so much.